The Aesthetics of Leadership podcast, the look of leadership that is unmistakable. What's up, Michael?
Oh man, how are you?
Oh, what an absolute pleasure to be able to speak with a true champion in life today, man. Thanks for saying
Thank you.
yes to this offer.
Yeah, of course. I'm excited to chat. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome, Michael. Well, I know we've never met before, so this is one of those potentially awkward situations where
Yeah.
I want to connect with you deeply on a podcast interview, yet we don't have a relationship or connection together, but we do have um, a mutual admirer, I'll say. Brandon Burns, do you know that name?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Brandon speaks so highly of you, and Brandon and I have worked on
Really?
multiple projects together. And he said, if there's a true champion in this world you need to speak to, it is Michael Jaroh. So,
Wow. That means a
uh,
lot. That means a lot coming from Brandon.
yeah, I call him the professor of NCAA gymnastics. So, I take whatever he says at face value. And thank you for saying yes to the interview, man.
Of course. Yeah. Sweet. Thank you so much.
Michael, you're so welcome, man, and what an honor to have you on the show. To have a very I don't want to say intellectual conversation, but I appreciate so much of what you have to say about what it what it means to be a man and a leader in this world today. I appreciate your background from your father and your grandfather and the influence they had on you, to the sport that you participate in, to the faith that you speak so amazingly authentic about. I just know there's a deep story there that can connect the listening audience to the purpose of this show in the first place, which is an appreciation of leadership. And I believe there is a inward leadership that we manage ourselves with, and then there's a light of leadership that we shine out into the world and have influence. And that alignment of our inner aesthetic and the outer aesthetic that we show the world, that's where the magic and the mentorship happens. And I just see you as that light out there on social media, trying to do the hard work that we were created with purpose for to go do. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
You
Oh
may not
yeah.
have an understanding of the show,
Totally.
but I believe there is an aesthetic to what leadership is. And I know we talk about there are thousands of books on leadership and personal development, but I believe when it's aligned, you see it and you know it. And when I see you and I hear you and I read your words, it's clear that you've got something that a lot of men are seeking. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I want to talk about today.
So yeah, I mean, I guess right off the bat, I think you're talking about kind of that inner I think of it a lot as like an inner dialect with yourself. Kind of what's going on inside of your soul and in your heart, and right, sharing that with the world, and at the same time meeting people with where they're at, to help them with whatever they're dealing with. And I think the first step to all of it is finding out who you are, if you want to make that impact. And I think that was something that I had to do a lot of deep digging for. I don't have my journal. I usually have my journal in my hand at all times, but um, I journal constantly. I have a journal, um, and it started probably when I was 18 years old. I would journal, but I wasn't consistent. I just journaled because I wanted to journal. Um, Come 2023, I started journaling every single night, which turned into now I journal every night still, but also throughout the day. And kind of it was more so of a process to, track my habits and see where I was making progress. Started with me reading Atomic Habits, and then kind of putting those words into action. And I did, and I saw within like 3 months, I was a completely different person. On the outside, on the inside, I was probably a pretty similar person within those 3 months. but I realized that there were some things that I needed to get rid of. Um, so through that process of journaling, I was able to find out who I was, and then in turn, um, now I can look back and be like, wow, that's who I was. That's not who I am anymore, though, right? Um, so yeah, it starts there, and then it goes from, doing those doing those sessions of me just journaling. I'm finding out what's stuck in here and I'm getting it out onto paper. And I think a lot of my um like what would you call it? I guess I write poems. So
Mm,
a lot of
nice.
my poems have like a similar theme of, just betterment, self-improvement, but also reality, right? So I think I tend to have a very optimistic outlook on life, while recognizing the negative that could happen, or the death of the situation, um, as it pertains to, to life, or really to anything. So I think, uh, my story is great, but it's developed into this like solitude inside my soul that now I can talk to people about it, and I can actually share and reiterate what I've had trapped inside of my soul for so long, and offer that, to maybe help some people out. So
Yeah, I appreciate that so much, Michael. And a lot of the frameworks that I use in coaching people and speaking to groups or helping companies align their leadership is a three-step process. I call it the map, the mirror, and the movement. I'd love
mm,
to kind of go through that. The map is the first part of the elevation of self-awareness. The mirror is the reflection back to you and what that means, and then the
mm,
movement is the plan forward based on what realizations that come to you through a journaling or reflective process, like you just explained. I'd
right.
love to map your beginnings,
Yeah,
if we could, Michael,
good.
the places and people that shaped your form before your platform, so to
Yeah,
speak.
for sure.
And I know you grew up in a lineage of gymnasts, right? Your father and your
Yeah,
grandfather paved a way for you that I think you have just flown. You have just taken
yeah,
it to a whole nother level. But before faith and influence entered the picture, Michael,
yeah.
what was it about gymnastics that taught you maybe about identity, discipline, and the kind of man that you wanted to become?
Yeah. So I think, obviously gymnastics doesn't start out as this thing where you realize it's a bunch of life lessons as a kid. It's just like this fun thing where you're doing flips and whatnot. But what really sparked my interest, because at the time when I started gymnastics, I also played soccer and I played t-ball. And I knew how to kick a ball, I knew how to pass a ball, and, stand in someone's way. I knew how to hit the ball, and I knew how to catch the ball and throw the ball. In gymnastics, I knew how to do nothing. Even though I knew how to do, like, I knew three things in the other sports, and I felt like, you know, obviously you can get to elite level of any sport extremely hard. And in those sports, it's like those repetitions are even more probably egregious because it's the same thing over and over again. And same thing for gymnastics, but what sparked my interest the most was you could never stop getting better. There's always another skill to gain. And even if, let's say, you're not even trying to learn a new skill, you can always make it a little bit better. Um, so I guess growing up as a gymnast, it's a very individual sport. So it's all on you. Even if you're competing for your team, like when you're out on the floor, it doesn't matter what your coach says, it doesn't matter what your teammates say. If you hit the routine, that was because you hit the routine. If you fall, that was also your fault. So it comes with an insane amount of mental pressure, let alone the stuff we're doing is, 100 years ago, no one would have thought that humans would be doing this stuff, right? So, it's very hard. I think I was talking about the kind of like pursuit of learning new stuff, and we're trying to achieve perfection in gymnastics. We're not going for um, mediocrity. If we were, we probably just wouldn't do it. The sport it used to be a 10-0 scale. Now it's a little bit different because difficulty is more a thing now. Um, but that's the hard part about gymnastics, and I think it's the best life lesson ever is that you can, have your goal of being that, let's say 10-0. We'll just talk about the execution, but knowing that you'll never reach it. Even if you do get that 10-0 with whatever difficulty or routine you do, in 10 years there's a kid that's going to be, points ahead of you because that's just
Yeah,
the
and
nature.
it's somebody else's interpretation of what you're doing that you get that number from. That's not your number. You
It's
might
not your
you might
number.
get off the high bar and think, man, I nailed that, but somebody else said, no, you didn't. You got a 9.2, right? And I think a
Completely.
lot of men fall prey to the expectations of others and lose sight of that inner aesthetic
Yeah.
that is really uniquely theirs. How do you overcome other people's perceptions of you when you're trying to perform to perfection?
Yeah. It's super hard thing to deal with especially as a gymnast. And even not as a gymnast, but I see life through the lens of gymnastics. Cause I mean, when I was a little kid, my bio on Instagram said gymnastics is life. And like that, it truly was my whole life for a while. Um, it's super hard though because we're judged based on appearance. Like the way you stand even like comes into play a little bit. The little thing like if your toe isn't pointed enough, it's every little minor detail, right? So you have to be super polished. And I think when I was young, that almost made me want to not be polished. Like I wanted to have good gymnastics, but I wanted to have the long hair. I wanted to kind of be able to do what I wanted. I wanted to, I guess rebel against the norm a little bit and sort of pave my own way. And I think maybe that did something good for me in a sense of, being my own person. But at the end of the day, you have to conform to the rules, right? And if the rules of the sport say you have to point your toes, and if you know that the judges like you having short hair, or whatever it is, they like this certain look, if you want to win, you have to do that. But I would
Hmm.
say at the end of the day, I mean, if you're doing the sport and you're trying to win, like you should do those things because you're trying to win, right?
Right. I guess that begs a question in my mind. Gymnastics clearly then demands, I would almost call it a sacred blend of strength and grace where the details matter. I'd almost call that like the aesthetic of mastery, if you will. When
Yeah,
did you realize that excellence isn't just what you do, but
yeah,
more of who you become through the process? Because I
yeah,
I think men can get trapped in that as
for
well.
sure. I think a lot of that came in 2023, and I think it actually was because I wanted to achieve like the highest goal I could achieve, which I realized in 2023 we had a year till 2024 Olympics. So I started buckling down. And that's when I read Atomic Habits. I start journaling. I start giving all these things up that I need to give up in my life, staying up late, partying, um, hanging out with people I shouldn't hang out with. I just started to really like I started to change myself because of this goal. And I worked as hard as I could. I tapped back into my faith, all these things, and I was doing it all for this one goal. But then the question comes up in your head and comes up not even in your head from people like, what if you don't achieve that goal? What happens? And um, you don't know what happens until you don't achieve that goal. But I didn't achieve that goal. I worked super hard, probably the hardest I'd ever worked. within that year time frame, maybe a couple points of it where I wasn't as strict as I could have been on my lifestyle. But through that process of diving deep in, maybe a little bit of a fall and then diving deep in again, complete change in character. And on the other end, I realized that because I was trying to achieve that goal, I became a much better man because of it. So even though I didn't reach the goal, now I'm more prepared for what's coming next. So I think there's a lot to say about that because at the end of the day, it's not about achieving the goal, like you said. It's about who you become in trying to achieve it. At the same time, you have to have that goal that you have your eyes set on. Otherwise, I'm imagining if I didn't want to go to the Olympics, if I just wanted to continue enjoying college and just like being a college student, a glorified college athlete. I don't think I would have learned a lot of the lessons that I had to learn that really tore my ego apart in that one year.
Mm,
Um, looking at, I talk a lot about the journaling. Looking back at that journaling, in the beginning, I had um this arrogance that you could read in the stuff that I wrote. You could see like, wow, this kid is very arrogant and almost ignorant to the truth, blind to reality. I don't know if it was because I was living in ignorance, maybe partially, and maybe that's what made the arrogance have such a potent smell because I was trying to compensate for my lack of ability in gymnastics because I saw myself always just as a gymnast.
mm.
But in trying to achieve my highest pursuit in gymnastics, I realized I was so much more and that it was more about the journey, the present moment, every single day of no matter what, if I fall, I'm getting back in that fight, um, than just winning the gold medal.
Yeah, that resonates, Michael. And I think you bring up an important point. In studying neuroscience and the science of setting goals and what it does up here, I I I would argue that most men who are suffering right now do not have a big, hairy, audacious enough goal
Yeah.
that consumes them. And probably
Right.
the second part of that is deconstructing that goal into the milestones of performance necessary to achieve it, right?
Yeah. Oh my
Um,
goodness. That's
with,
yeah.
without the big hairy goal that's so much bigger than us, setting an Olympic goal,
Yeah.
man, you're representing your country. You
Yeah.
are part of an elite team that is so much bigger than what we are.
Yeah.
That's the kind of goal we need to be setting, but we also need the help in deconstructing it. How did you do that? Because
Yeah.
I don't want to complicate the question, but
Yeah.
I feel like when we don't have clarity on the goal, any road will get us there. So we
Yeah.
waffle a lot and we take this windy road, and therefore our patience is tested. We rely too much on willpower, and we're forgetting the structure that it takes to create a goal. And most people have to fall to the absolute bottom in order to look up and then create the ladder out.
Yeah.
Was that the moment for you, or did you just make the
Yes. So
choice and then discipline got you there?
I always wanted to go to the Olympics since
Hmm.
I was 8 years old. Something I talked about since I was eight. Growing up, I was that kid that talked about going to the Olympics. And then at some point, it wasn't as prominent on my head because, like you said, that. I didn't have that ladder. I didn't have that set of steps that if I just follow this plan, I would do it. So it was almost like this figment of my imagination that it was a possibility that I could go to the Olympics and not some sort of reality that I actually can if I do these things that are necessary, right? So the first Olympics that I was age eligible to go to was 2020, which is the 2021 Olympics actually because of COVID. And I missed out on that one. It kind of hurt a little bit, but I knew I hadn't really given a good effort to like I wasn't thinking about the Olympics for, the 2 years leading up. So like maybe like at NCAA's, I was like, oh, if I do well here, maybe I have a shot of going to the Olympics. But the guys that made that team were thinking about it for the last 4, 5, 6, 8 years. They've been trying to get on that team. So, that I didn't realize that though. I thought, oh, I just didn't make the team because I didn't do good enough. Come to 2023, I realized in that moment that I didn't make it the last time because I wasn't really focused on it for long enough. So I gave myself that year. I thought that was going to be enough. And I didn't know if I thought that was going to be enough, but I thought, you know what, I might as well give it my best effort. Um, so I made routines that I was like, okay, these routines will fit the picture. If I just get these routines ready, in time for the Olympics, I'll make it. And I think the routines were sufficient enough, but my plan still wasn't there. My plan was just get these routines. So all of a sudden, I'm trying to get these routines today. Like I'm like training out of anxiety that if I don't do this now, I'm not going to be ready to do it in a year. Which in some sense, like when you only have a year left and you're as far away from your goal as I was, um, yeah, like that's kind of how it was. Um, but looking at it right now, I'm in like an interesting spot right now. I don't exactly have a definite coach right now. I'm not sure where I'm going to train for the next 32 and a half months leading up to the Olympics. I have a few places that I'm going to try out in the next month or so, and then in December I'll be parked somewhere for the remainder of my go to the Olympics. But I have and before it was always, you have your coach that makes a plan for you. And you don't see that plan necessarily unless they show it to you, but you just listen to what they say. And I think this time that I have right now, it's so beautiful because I get to be my own coach and I've created a plan for myself. I know the routines that right now I'm still recovering from the shoulder, but I know the routines that I will be able to do this January already. And I know the routines that I need to be able to do in 2028. And I have every month written out with where I'll put each single skill that isn't already in the routine for this January into the routine for Olympic trials. Or well, I mean it's a process. So it's not like before it was like, oh, I have to have this ready by Olympic trials, but it's like I'm gonna add this skill for Winter Cup. I'm gonna add this skill after Winter Cup, and then I'm gonna add this skill before US Championships 2026. And then for, let's hope I make World Championships 2026, I'll add this skill in, um, this skill for November. So rather than it being this, oh my goodness, I have 13 skills that I need to add, which I think that's my number right now. Um, it'll be like it's like one skill every couple months. So it changes the focus from this big lofty, like you said, hairy goal, this beast of a goal, and turns it into, I'm gonna take one bite at a time. And as long as I just follow that plan and the skills slide into place, and it's really just takes me staying in gymnastic shape, right? And then focusing on those single skills that I need to add. And in theory, I mean, it's obviously very difficult. Otherwise, I would have already done it. But in theory, if I follow the plan, it shouldn't be that hard. And I think that's the difference in right now of my mentality of seeing it as this reality rather than this figment of my imagination that I had in high school of I want to go to the Olympics, where I couldn't even understand what that meant. What
Mm.
does it truly take to become an Olympian? And there's more to say with, writing down and seeing what you have to do than just doing it, which I'm a big fan of adrenaline and just like sports in general. So for me, it was always just about doing gymnastics.
Yeah, sports are such a good metaphor for the concepts of leadership that we're talking about. I used to be part of the clean sport program with USADA, so I know
Yeah.
spending a lot of quality time with some incredible athletes around the world. one concept that stuck with me was the degree of presence
Mm,
required of an athlete when they are doing what they were created to do. That's I call it the form as leadership, and
yeah,
to me that speaks to the branding of the podcast. The aesthetics of leadership is
yeah,
all about presence, how your being shapes a room before your words ever do.
yeah,
So gymnastics as a playground, if we can use that metaphor, how has
sure.
gymnastics trained you to lead through form rather than force? And how does that same principle apply to leading and influencing online like you do?
Yeah. So I got to give credit where credit's due. I had a fantastic coach growing up. Um, like a true mentor, and like this man, you Tonskin, that's his name. Um, he he taught me everything I know about the sport, truly. And in the sport, like showed me real life lessons. I think there were probably once a month we would sit down as a team, and he would basically like give us this like heart to heart lecture. Whether it's about, your goals, or whether it's about this, that, or the other thing. Maybe it wasn't every single month, but very often I remember we would just sit down and everyone's just listening to him, and just this insane amount of wisdom coming like, and we're getting it at such a young age, right? So I learned that at a young age, if you don't have the right mindset and the right form of heart going into your space, that it's not going to be the same at all. So I mean that goes for sport, but like you said, in leadership everywhere, right? So if I want to lead people, or specifically young athletes correctly online, I have to appeal to a certain aesthetic that, one, I need to get them to listen, right? So I need to first find a way to meet them where they're at, and almost not in a manipulative way, but trick them into um believing in themselves, first of all, but also into working hard. Not tricking them, just making them want to work hard, making it appealing to live this lifestyle that it seems like it's hard, but telling them that hard doesn't mean bad, and making them realize that it's actually good if it's hard. Um, so it comes with this attitude of being a servant. You have to really humble yourself. Um, I know for me, I've gone about it in a wrong way before, where, I thought if I just did the amazing thing, it would inspire the kids and they would follow in my footsteps. And it might inspire them, it might motivate them a little bit. But if I'm not relaying the message of how to do that, and teaching them that it's not just about, that one moment where I did it, it was about everything that led up to it, then all they see is the glory moment, and they have no idea. I'm just leaving them in the dust in a sense. So yeah, I have to be able to realize that it's not all about that moment. If I even want to help them.
Mm. Yeah, that's beautiful, man.
Yeah.
Your journey hasn't been an easy one, Michael. I think in
Yeah.
reading about your background, did I read 8 concussions? In,
Um, Hopefully not eight. I think it was seven, but
okay, 7 concussions, injuries, recovery. I feel like every fall has had its own gospel for
yeah,
you. I guess my curiosity is, what has falling, literally hitting the mat,
yeah,
taught you about humility, resilience, and actually surrendering control to something greater than yourself?
yeah. I know that I've had a ton of injuries. 7 concussions, uh, torn labrum that I just got fixed. I've broken my foot. I've sprained both of my ankles twice at the same time. Um, I've had some neck issues. I have a desiccated disc in my lower back. I have arthritis in both of my elbows. Um, I've broken one of my fingers. Just tons of minor injuries as well. Odd slaughters, that was really bad. Um, but every time I've fallen, when gymnastics is a very hard sport mentally, and when you get injured, I don't know if every gymnast can relate, but sometimes when you get injured, it's almost like a sigh of relief. And that's a weird thing to say because it doesn't make it's like, well, do you not want to do your sport then? Do you not like it? And that's like a question you have to face when you do feel that, oh, I don't have to go compete now. Like thank God, but I think it's more of a you can't control anything anymore. So without realizing that you're surrendering control to something greater that you don't really understand, you receive grace as a kid when you get injured. And I think I experienced that without understanding what that grace was for the longest time I had a lot of anxiety leading up to big meets and I didn't really show it a lot. I kind of just like tried to work through it. And I think because of that, I was always reaching for something that I couldn't grab. And I would reach a little bit too far, and then for the most of the part, it was a concussion. I got my first concussion when I was 8 years old.
Mm.
I got my second one when I was in eighth grade at Winter Cup. Um, and then a year, I think, no, freshman year I didn't get one, but sophomore and junior year, that same exact week of Winter Cup, just before the meet, I also got concussions. So it felt like I was repeating my life and I didn't know why. Cause I think like you receive that grace after you get injured, but I didn't there's this thing of like continuing the opportunity, right? So you want to like hold on to that grace and remember it, like how that feeling was. So maybe you don't repeat that same thing that caused you to fall in the first place. And I didn't learn that until seven concussions. That last one it's the same thing. I was at Winter Cup. Now I'm 21 years old, and I'm thinking that if I just make national team, all my problems are gonna go away. This, that, and the other thing, and I'm freaking out at the meet. Same thing, anxiety. I had a nightmare the day before the competition that my Achilles snapped. 5 days before that, I had a nightmare that my grip snapped in half. So, because I had that nightmare that my grip snapped in half, and then I saw a kid's grip break at the meet, I put on brand new grips. Granted, brand new grips are a little bit tighter, they're a little bit shorter than you may want them. So I'm going and I'm trying to stretch them out. That second day of competition, my grip snaps. Seventh concussion. So I'm living in this reality that doesn't feel real and I'm living out of fear. I'm so afraid to not reach my goal that I cause myself to not reach my goal again. But this time it was like felt so out of my control because I was like I did everything I could. I put my new grips on. I thought I was doing everything I could and then it still happened. So in that moment and I got really lucky because an extra half flip and instead of just being like on my neck, I'm on the top of my head. And like who knows what could have happened there and I could have died and that's how I look at it. I got lucky enough that I didn't flip long enough and I'm still alive, so I better take this as a lesson and use it for good, otherwise I'm screwed. That's how I took it. I was so like in that time of recovering from that concussion, like oh my goodness, I remember having to do that first ring dismount at the end of a routine. After that I was at Penn State. It was summer. We're leading up to US Classics to prepare for US Championships. And you could ask my coaches. I was a mess.
Mm.
I thought I was gonna throw up. I went to the bathroom like three different times to try and throw up. I'm like kind of I'm crying a little bit in the corner. Like I'm actually like PTSD, like real life PTSD that my grip's gonna break. And I remember something super important that my coach told me that day. He was like, Michael, you need to give yourself some grace. He
Mm,
was like, no one's experienced what you've experienced. It's okay that you're feeling that way right now. This isn't something
mm,
you don't need to be scared of what you're feeling right now. It's something you need to embrace. And I did. I was fine.
mm.
I landed the dismount. It was great. Um, I'm not gonna lie, I forgot the question. I'm kind of getting a little off track right now.
No, no, no. That's great, Michael, because I think what you're bringing up is another one of those points in the life of men today
Uh,
that I really want to center on what you just said. I think you embody a rare paradox.
uh-huh.
There's the warrior who wants to compete fiercely, and the
Yeah,
shepherd who serves faithfully.
yeah.
And there's this balance between the strength required in competition and the softness of surrender necessary as a human. And I think as a man, that's often difficult for us to reconcile those two.
Oh
So
yeah.
maybe this is a better question: is how do you reconcile the masculine instinct to dominate with the spiritual call to surrender? I
Yeah.
think that's hard for men.
I absolutely agree. Um I mean, as a Christian, I think it's impossible to have that true masculine strength without surrender. Um, and that's something I never understood until probably these last 2 years that um, surrendering is a form of strength. If you can't surrender, if you constantly are trying to do it on your own might, on your own will, on your own strength, that any man that uh, does an examination of his life, his thoughts or anything should know that he's flawed. So how can your strength and your might possibly be sufficient enough for this world? I think the simple answer is it's not. Unless you surrender. So I think for me it's been through adversity. That's how I've come to surrendering is I almost felt like I was forced to surrender to a point where I was fighting it so hard. I'm constantly trying to do it on my own will, on my own strength. Um, until I realized that I couldn't. And once I realized that I couldn't, which for me was that 2023 rock bottom where, I'm going through that PTSD of that last concussion. I'm freaking out. I'm being told I'm not going to reach my goals. I'm hearing all these things and I have no idea who to believe, what to believe, where to go. So I kind of just accepted that I didn't know. Like I thought I knew a lot, but I actually knew nothing. Right? So I started learning. And huh, I'm trying to think if there's any better way to answer this.
Yeah, well, I think you said it. Doing hard things has taught you how to surrender,
Yeah,
and maybe in today's world, and I hate to overgeneralize it like this, but when the answers are as just one chat GPT away, we don't have to do the hard work of finding the answers. And therefore, without doing the hard work of finding it, we're not doing the hard work of synthesizing our our way forward. We're waiting on the answer. We're always hesitating, but we never
yeah,
surrender. So I wonder if we're just not doing hard enough stuff these days. Life is too easy, but you're in
mm,
a sport where hard stuff is demanded of you.
yeah,
I don't know.
absolutely. Yeah, no, that resonates great. I think you're absolutely right, and I think my sport is very demanding, but even like now with this age of social media and being very wrapped up in it. I I have this platform where I can share a lot of great things, but I could also go the complete opposite way and not provide any real value and probably profit way more from it. um, which is scary, like
Mm,
so scary because we're being told this lie that if we just go make a bunch of money, no matter how we make it, we'll be able to fulfill that void in our hearts that we all have, and it won't. But the
mm,
world always around us will tell us that it will, and it'll tell us to use ChatGPT. Just look it up. You'll be fine. Just sit there and kind of almost just waste your time, make the money, and have a minimal valuable impact, and then give your kids the money. Sure, money can provide freedom. It can do a lot of great things. I agree with that, but I think if it's being made, and I guess this is all kind of an analogy for life. If it's being made in that way where it's not honoring, that inner solitude that you have, then it's gonna actually, instead of fulfilling you, it's gonna hurt you more. And then now you're gonna have this money that you, in some sense, don't deserve because you didn't do anything to work hard for it. You know?
mm.
I get personally, like as being me, I get a lot of people trying to get make me or trying to I don't even know how to say this. People tell me to make an OnlyFans, and I'm like, no. They're like, you should do it. You'll make a lot of money, and then you can give it to charities. And I'm like,
You're
I'm
missing
like,
the point.
you're missing the point. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I oftentimes, if it's like a DM with like a fan or someone that has already DM'd me before, and then they say that, I'll just send them a link to my course. I'm like, I can teach you how to get fit. I was like, I can
Yeah.
teach you how to get fit. Maybe I can help mentor you, whatever. But um,
Mm,
it's really, that's the world we live in today, where that stuff is so normalized, and it's seen as like people only see the number and they only care about the number, that the substance is almost diminished to its entirety, and no one even cares what people are doing to make their money. If they have enough money to buy a
mm.
Lamborghini and to show off, then it doesn't really matter what they did to get it. They don't really care, you know?
Yeah, and those are the men that I serve because they can achieve, they can be high performance individuals who
Yeah.
have achieved every metric of success that you would measure against, and yet they are empty and broken. So
Yeah.
I love that you speak to embodiment as the missing component
Yeah.
of the dopamine hits that we're all trying to receive, but
Yeah.
it's the foundation of values that you're standing on that you can always rely on as well. And I appreciate
Yeah.
your platform that you're standing on because it's a faithful one. There's
Thank you.
some amazing spiritual values there, and I
Thank
think
you.
that's why your light is so attractive.
Yeah.
And I want to be respectful of your time, Michael. I know we're
Yeah.
pushing 45 minutes here, but
Okay.
for the men listening to this podcast who want to lead with more presence, purpose, if you will, and even peace. What's one concrete thing they can do in the next 48 hours to begin embodying the aesthetic of leadership that you've described to us today?
Yeah. Um, I mean, for me, there's no answer other than to get on your knees and pray.
Mm,
Um, if there's anything that you can do that will drastically change your life in 48 hours, you need to pray.
mm,
That's all it is. If you've never prayed before, if you don't know how to pray, I remember, if you don't know what to say whatever you're thinking. I think people are so scared to pray, they don't know how to pray, they don't know what to say, and that's a normal thing, but um just pray. I remember, and this is a very vulnerable moment for me. The first time I talked to God since I was maybe 14 years old was the night I broke up with my girlfriend when I was 21 years old. And it was like a really low moment for me. I remember I was pretty much cursing God out. But he still responded and he still gave me grace, even though I was so I wasn't I was surrendering in that moment, and he could see that I was lost, and that's the thing. He doesn't care where you are. He just wants you to come to him. And I think that's it. Doesn't matter what you say at first, and it doesn't matter who you are at first. He's gonna clean you, and it's nothing that you can do that will make you deserving of that cleanliness. It's everything that he is that makes him able to give you that grace that you can receive. So I would say get down on your knees and pray.
Amazing. Amazing. So, Michael, I want to end the podcast with a lightning round, if you will. These are
Yeah.
short, high energy, rapid fire. So just say what comes to your mind, and then we're going to move to the next one. So here's number one if you're ready.
Let's go.
All right. Favorite scripture or quote that grounds you before a competition?
Ooh. Proverbs 3, 5 to 6. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, lean not to thy own understanding. See God in all thy ways, and he shall direct thy paths.
The movement, the gymnastics movement that feels most like prayer.
Oh, that feels most like prayer. I would say the manna. Because I mean, it's called a manna, but also it embodies strength, flexibility, and patience all in one move. And it's I think it's the epitome of gymnastics, is the manna.
Nice. What is one thing men get wrong about strength?
About strength. I think men oftentimes, I actually posted about an hour ago about this, that if you're not or if you're too flexible, you'll get weaker. I think it's the opposite. I think if you get more flexible, you have more range of motion, and therefore you can be stronger in ways that people that aren't flexible, they just can never achieve. So flexibility goes hand in hand with strength.
Wow. All right. Next to the last one. One word that describes God's current work in your life.
Hmm. Oh man. The first word that came to mind was patience, and that's what we're going for. I think the past 2 years have been him developing my patience. Sure through adversity, but every single time I've been beaten down, there's been something way greater on the other side, as long as I just trusted in him. And patience is everything. You know, we have to endure at the end of the day. It's not that one single moment in today that'll fix everything. It's that long term of getting back in the fight.
Go ahead and drop the microphone on the ground right there. All right. Last one, Michael. Last one. If influence disappeared tomorrow, who would you still be?
I would still be Orthodox Christian, and I would if influence was gone, I would just serve the best I could. I don't know what else I would do other than serve and hope to have a family in the future.
Wow, Michael, brother, you have shown us today that leadership isn't really about control. It's about congruence. I would say you've embodied what it looks like when your neural alignment meets divine surrender. Man, thank you, Michael, for bringing your form, your faith, and your flow into this space and speaking love, light, and leadership into the lives of men. I can't thank you enough. Appreciate you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for having me on. I love to share and do my part. So I appreciate this opportunity as well.
The Aesthetics of Leadership podcast, the look of leadership that is unmistakable.